Welcome to Electrifying Wisconsin's Building Sector, the afternoon panel. We're really happy to have you all here today. My name is Lauren Rieg. I am a senior associate with the Rocky Mountain Institute, where I work on building decarbonization policy across the Midwest, including the great state of Wisconsin. And today we have three amazing experts, Heather Allen, Mark Hansen, and Dylan Cry. So we're going to start today with introductions. So we actually have our three panelists are all heat pump owners, so we really have the experts here talking to you all today. So we'll start with an introduction. They'll give us a quick overview of their work, and then a quick story about their heat pump. Heather, we can start with you.
Are you going to do first two slides at this point as well?
Sure.
Okay.
Let me pull those up.
Hi, thank you so much, Lauren. It's great to be here. I just want to say what a joy it is to see the Renew Summit break record attendee numbers again this year. Huge congratulations. I know everyone here has a hand in the summit. Thank you for being here. Thank you for building this movement. I've been coming here, I believe, since 2017 before I was in the industry, and it's just a joy to watch Wisconsin build clean energy. So I'm Heather. I work with Elevate. It's a nonprofit. There's also a solar installer called Elevate here, so we're slightly different. Elevate Electric Solar. But Elevate, the nonprofit, we are headquartered in Chicago, but we work all across the Midwest, and we do a lot of work here in Wisconsin. You can see here on a map a couple of the places where our projects are located. We have a really robust program where we partner with Sustain Dane and several municipalities, including the City of Madison, Middleton, and Fitchburg here. We also work with the City of Eau Claire on the same type of program up north. And the description of the program is right there. What we do is we work with small to medium sized, naturally occurring affordable housing multifamily buildings. That's a bit of a mouthful, but it's just those quads that you see around where rent is reasonable, and those buildings were built quite a long time ago. And they may not be the most energy efficient or fuel, have lots of weatherization problems, and the fuel is not as efficient. So we work with those landowners and landlords to help them understand what energy in their building is doing, and we do assessments with them and help with step-by-step navigation to help them understand what's available to them and how to improve energy efficiency in their building. Overall, Elevate's been around about 20 years, and we've retrofit over 200,000 units of affordable housing. We also work on high-performance buildings. We work on energy planning with tribal governments. And so that's a little snapshot of what we do. I have a colleague here. If you want to raise your hand, Keith. If you want to learn more about Elevate, we can talk to Keith, too. I'll pause there.
Amazing. Thank you, Mark. I'll hand it to you.
Good, thank you. And can you show an image or two here? There we go. So I'm Mark Hansen with Hoffman Planning, Design, and Construction. So we've been around before all this electrification really got going seriously. We've been around about 140 years. But our forte after around the year 2000 was really to move into sustainable projects, is what we really wanted to do. We are working for clients, so sometimes clients ask for something less than really sustainable, and you do the best you can with that. Looking at our work over the last 23 years, I've noticed that we've done a fair number of geothermal and, in a few cases, air source heat pump projects. So as part of our project portfolio, we are working in that direction. When you're really lucky, you get to do both the electrification of the building, particularly geothermal we really like in this climate, and bringing on-site solar as being a big element in our work. And in some of these projects, we're fortunate enough, and we really try to work with owners to advocate and let them know about the opportunity to move to net zero projects. This particular project shown on the screen is Holy Wisdom Monastery. It was one of the projects mentioned in the luncheon session today, and you can't really see, if you really look carefully and have a lot of imagination, you can see the geothermal systems. But, but actually, truth be told, the upper right, which is almost cut off in this image, that is the new monastery building built 2009, built with geothermal, built with some solar, but we said solar's awfully expensive, wait a few years. We then, you can see, filled the roofs with solar using third-party finance in 2014. And then at the lower building there is the building that we are, 1954 vintage, we are converting to geothermal. The design's done, the test well is done, and it will be done by the end of August if all things stay on schedule. The solar field below is what we've now added, 300 kW AC, to be able to bring these two buildings, which are the core commercial buildings at Holy Wisdom Monastery, to net zero energy. And one more quick image for my bona fides, if we have
Sorry,
it
that
here.
was the only one you sent me. I didn't get
Or
the.
you didn't get the heat pump picture?
Oh, I can bring that up.
Okay.
Of all three of you.
Oh, all right, well, there's all three of us. At home, we have an electric vehicle now, and we have an air source heat pump. There is no gas furnace in our house, so.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Dylan?
Yeah, good afternoon. Dylan Crime with Focus on Energy. For the past 3 years, I had been the residential portfolio manager, but in the past couple months, I moved into a new role of Home Energy Rebates Program Manager. So I'll be speaking today about Focus on Energy, but then also the fact that the Home Energy Rebate programs through the Inflation Reduction Act will be coming through Focus on Energy. So kind of got two different angles to talk about there today. Focus on Energy, I assume probably most of you would know who we are at this point. We're the Wisconsin statewide energy efficiency and renewable energy program. And so we assist customers, particularly electric and natural gas customers, save energy and save money. I'll probably keep it short and simple right there.
Awesome. Well, thank you three so much for joining us today. And Mark, I appreciate you pointing out the slide that I was about to share, which is proof that all three of our panelists are very proud heat pump owners. I particularly appreciate that Dylan included his dog. It really makes these slides more engaging and interesting.
Oh, there's another dog there on the left.
Oh, two dogs. Wow, this is really the best panel, y'all. All right, so today we'll be focusing on the policy and market transformation opportunities we're expecting to see in the building electrification and decarbonization market here in Wisconsin, especially given some of the new market catalysts such as the Inflation Reduction Act. So I'd kind of like to start there and start today with thinking about the critical opportunities to jumpstarting the building market here in Wisconsin. Dylan, I'll start with you. Given the $149 million in IRA rebates that the state is expecting, in addition to the uncapped tax credits and millions of dollars in potential flexible funding, could you share how Focus on Energy is thinking about building electrification and how the IRA is playing into that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. So first of all, I would say the IRA, the home energy rebate programs, aren't yet here, and I know we've been hearing a lot about them. Right? They've been out in the world. Oh, Oh, I'll scoot closer. Here we go. Thanks. Thank you, Heather. So the home energy rebate programs aren't yet here, even though we've been hearing a lot about them, right, for the past year and a half, 2 years. So our biggest message to anyone right now that's interested in electrifying is don't wait. Go do it now. And actually, do you have my slide up? Yeah, thank you very much.
Yep.
And one of the reasons, well, there's a couple. One is that the electrification path or program through the home energy rebates is targeted at low and moderate income homes. So there's a hard income cap for that particular program. And the other reason is that there are programs and resources available now if you want to electrify. So one of the reasons I'm showing the tax credits here is that these are current. They were enacted last year. So on the right-hand side, you can kind of that middle column, I guess, right column there. Those are all of the newly updated tax credits. And so there's a lot of great stuff in there. It used to be a lifetime cap of $500. It's now up to $3,200 annually. Those are available for the next 10 years, so we know that they're there. You can stack these with the focus on energy rebates as well. So as I was saying, there's a lot of resources out there, focus on energy, plus these tax credits, that if you're at all thinking about electrification, go ahead and pull the trigger. We don't know yet what the programs, the home energy rebate programs, are going to look like exactly. But on the electrification side, we do know there is that hard income cap. So a lot of people have kind of heard about the $8,000 for a heat pump. Yeah, I don't know if they're going to be able to have access to that, right? It depends on how the program's going to be designed. So did want to mention those things real briefly. I guess going back into the kind of home energy rebates and some of the opportunities there for those who can participate. So I mentioned focus on energy. We are ratepayer funded, and it's electric and natural gas utility ratepayers that pay into that program. And that means the benefits need to go back to those customers. Traditionally, Focus has had an interesting history, I guess, with electrification. You could say it was explicitly prohibited in years past. That has changed recently, which is great. But we still can't help quite a few folks. In particular, someone that heats with propane or fuel oil hasn't been able to participate with Focus on Energy, heat pump credit rebates. Sorry. The home energy rebate programs are statewide for the entire state, and we can help everyone. And in particular, we've actually been told by the Public Service Commission that we should be targeting folks with high energy burden and those on delivered fuels. Those folks that haven't been able to participate in Focus on Energy in the past. So that's really encouraging. There's a ton of opportunity there. Lots of people that need help around the state that we haven't been able to necessarily help with Focus on Energy in the past. A couple things that we're focusing on right now. We're just gathering some feedback to put the programs together. Education is going to be a big piece, though. We're kind of looking at how do we make sure a customer knows, and this is really important for electrification or really any kind of building upgrades, is what's the correct order of operations in a home. We got to educate the consumer. We've got to educate the contractor too. I mean, that's difficult, right? Trying to work with multiple contractors on one project, they're all going after the same wallet. And so getting them to say, no, you should go do this other thing first, that can be really tough. So there's a lot of education there, particularly on kind of order of operations, making sure folks are doing it correctly, which for those, if you're unfamiliar, would be take care of our envelope first, right? Take care of the walls, attic, the box sills down in the basement. Then we can talk about appliances, or, HVAC and water heater upgrades. And then finally, we can talk about renewables. And I know we're here at the Renew Wisconsin Summit, but that really should be the last thing people are doing in their home. We need to reduce before we put renewables on. So, and then I guess two other quick notes, just a couple terms out there. So beneficial electrification is one. I would say that I'm personally a proponent of that over electrify everything. Electrify everything kind of says, let's do it all right now. It doesn't matter the cost. Beneficial electrification is a bit more of a pragmatic approach, saying let's look at the conditions in the home and kind of the situation we're in. Let's make sure that we're not being overly costly in our pure pursuit of just electrify everything right away. And so I generally would agree with that approach, and I think Focus on Energy kind of aligns with that approach as well. And then just personally, so we did have that nice photo of all of us up there with our heat pumps. I was showing my indoor unit. Yeah, thank you. So my air handler for my heat pump is on the right. So it is exactly where my furnace was and hooked right up into my ductwork. So instead of a furnace that's burning natural gas inside of that unit, I've got basically two giant toaster coils. And so that's my backup heat, is electric resistance, or just really a giant toaster. And it's worked great. I'm on my third winter. I'm here in Madison. Have not had any issues. Those backup coils do fire every now and then, but I'm okay with that. On the left is a 120 volt heat pump water heater. So I did get that. That is a plug-in heat pump water heater, which is the correct one if you're currently on natural gas. It's very expensive to have to run new electric for a 240 volt. And so that was always a problem that we were facing as an industry and telling people to go to heat pump water heaters. So yeah, just wanted to share those two things. My outdoor unit looks exactly like Mark's. So you can kind of see my whole system right there. The indoor connects to the outdoor. The only thing I have left in my home to electrify is my natural gas fireplace. Otherwise, I've gone full electric. So, yeah. And I think I'll wrap.
Awesome. Thank you,
Got
Dylan.
all my stuff all in one.
Beautiful, amazing. It was really interesting to learn about some of the residential incentive opportunities, both that exist today, but are also coming down the pipeline, the water pipeline. So next, now that we've kind of taken a dip into what are the existing and upcoming opportunities, I'd like to understand what are some of the real life successes that we're seeing and where are we actually seeing these projects implemented? Mark, you touched on this a little bit already, but I'd love to hear a deeper dive. Your organization supported the installation of solar PV, batteries, and a geothermal heat pump at Holy Wisdom Monastery here in Dane County. Could you talk through that project or similar projects, how that project occurred and how it is leveraging IRA funding?
I would be happy to. And I would note that we are seeing a real surge in interest in geothermal systems and in solar. And I'll come back to Dylan's important point that you don't electrify just to electrify. You get efficiency in, and when you're electrifying, if you've got a client like most of our clients at Hoffman, they are watching the budget. And so we're trying to do this that makes sense up front, first cost, makes sense up front, after the fact and operating costs, and we do monitor these projects. In this particular case at Holy Wisdom, back in the day when gas prices were actually higher than they are now, and they may well return in that direction, it was a rather easy call to go with a geothermal system in 2009. That's the upper right building. And when we did that building, we had a conversation with the Benedictine Sisters of Madison, who own this property and I would say, operate wonderful programs there. If any of you would like to look at their programs, we thought, this really makes sense given your 4 mission areas, including care for the earth. Eventually, it makes all the sense in the world to get to net zero energy. And indeed, of course, what we've been learning in that time between 2000 and now, and what we're seeing now, is just reinforcing that message clearly. Our challenge was the building in the middle, a 1954 building. It is what it is. It's got a masonry outside, which is, as many of you might realize, is a real problem in terms of where and how can you add insulation, because that's a real problem, and a lot of times it is not worth the effort, unfortunately. But we also said, is now the time, having added the other solar, and I would add no cost to the owner, because we were able to do at that time a third-party ownership in 2014 when we added all the solar on the roof, about 127 kW. So no cost up front and operational savings every year. So that's the win-win that Dylan is kind of saying we should keep in mind. So for the lower building, we knew we were going to lose that heating system, 1954 building, and now we're losing it. And so the thought there is, can we afford to go to geothermal? And knowing that it's going to cost so much more than a conventional replacement, that is, i.e. put in some new boilers, fix some other stuff, fix some fan coil units in the rooms, and put in a new chiller. And that cost would have been about $1.6 million. The cost to do that all with geothermal is about $2.2 million. So you're talking more money up front. At least these are the prices that emerged that have been jumping around in late pandemic era pricing. So, but then when you bring in the IRA, when these decisions were being made, look, we can get 30% on the geothermal, a 30% tax credit, direct payment. If we do Buy American, which is easy with geothermal, make sure you ask for it and pay attention to details, you can do it, another 10%. And when you're talking about the system, it's the entire system and the design effort. So all the design that's going into that, you wrap that all in, and you grab your 40% tax credit on that. On the solar side, because we're still largely in the world of imported panels, you're looking at the 30% side. So that was the vision, and after we did that, it turned out the first cost, you bring that, you take 40% off that 2.2 million, all of a sudden you are now cheaper than doing it with conventional. So that is, you talk about what is going to persuade you on the front end, that's pretty good. We were also very grateful to the OEI Office of Energy Innovation grant program for another $575,000 grant. So you pile those together, and this is a winner. The other thing is when you are adding all that solar to get to net zero, normally you end up, well, you will always end up selling a lot of your power back to the utility at not a very good rate, as I think almost everyone would realize. So the question is, how do we make that work financially in terms of operating costs? In this case, the best we've run our numbers so far, and now that we're building it, we're going to find out when we measure it. It looks like we felt we could be about cash flow neutral. In other words, you can get all the way to net zero without increasing your operating costs. We think they're going to come down a little bit, and that's assuming natural gas prices stay low. Now, if natural gas prices start jumping around again, then that'll all get easier. So, very convincing story. It was sort of a no-brainer. Yes, we've got to use the IRA incentives and go in this direction. And I would note that when you can get this combination that you are both getting efficiency up front with your geothermal systems, and then you can say, but we're buying electric power, and it's fairly costly within MG&E service territory. It's our utility provider. If you can provide a bunch of your solar, or maybe a net zero amount of your solar on your own, that's much cheaper. Final comment is on the solar end of this. We were able to do third party again, which again is a big controversy in Wisconsin, because we're doing a before in front of the meter direct connect tariff. And if you're doing a direct connect tariff, then MG&E doesn't care who owns the system. So we're doing third party there. So again, for the monastery, getting all the way to net zero, no money up front on the solar side. So that's a combination of incentives and the kind of that trifecta. If you can get the efficiency, you can get the geothermal, and you can get the solar all in one package.
That's amazing to hear. It's really interesting to see where these successes are occurring and where we're seeing electrification meet renewable energy, meet envelope upgrades, meet 30 or 40% off upfront costs, which I think everyone would always like that on anything they purchase. So it's been really interesting to learn about the opportunities and about these successes. But I also wanted to talk about the challenges that we expect in this industry, because these are very real. And there's a very real and serious critique about IRA and the building decarbonization movement as a whole, that it does not serve affordable and multifamily housing as well as it serves other sectors like market rate single-family houses or commercial sectors. And so this is something that Elevate, and Heather herself, really prioritizes, is supporting the decarbonization of affordable housing. So Heather, could you speak to the challenges we're seeing in this sector?
Thanks, Lauren. So I'm going to run through a few things, a few ways Elevate is approaching these different questions. One project I wanted to tell you about is work we're doing up with the Lac de Flambeau Chippewa Housing Authority. We're helping take a mid-sized affordable housing complex that the tribe owns and add solar and battery storage and do energy efficiency upgrades, heat pumps, and help reduce total carbon emissions from the project and do energy savings. It became very clear through this work that with this project we had to add solar to make the numbers pencil out. But take this project and multiply it by 10,000, and then you've got the state of Wisconsin shifting its carbon on multifamily buildings, right? So one thing that Elevate is doing to expand some of this work is we are actually partnering with community-based organizations across Wisconsin, especially environmental justice communities and rural-based communities who are looking to figure out how to access those federal funds. So if you know of a community group who's trying to figure out which of these dozens of funds from EPA or HUD or DOE should my organization be applying for, and how do I write this grant, please come talk to one of us. I pointed out Keith, but there's several other members of the Elevate team, if you don't mind raising your hand here today. We are looking for more partners in Wisconsin to help navigate this maze of funding. There is a lot of funding, but it is confusing, and some of the grants themselves are challenging. So Elevate and our partners are providing technical assistance to help building owners, property owners, plan for energy upgrades and secure funding to do those upgrades. And actually, we have the PSC to thank to work for new funds to help do more energy planning with tribal communities in Wisconsin. So I can shift to the next slide. So here's a report that Slipstream, Elevate, and the Center for Energy and Environment put out this summer on air source heat pumps in Wisconsin and the potential for the market. I have a paper copy of the report if you're super interested in digging in, but it's available online and there's a webinar about it. But I think this slide kind of shows the picture. This is just the residential sector of the market. So, you know, we're not thinking about schools or commercial buildings right now, but just the residential sector in the market. The report looked at what are the carbon reduction benefits of different actions with multifamily and single family, different moves between fuels to electrification? What are the equity outcomes of these investments? What's the customer economic benefit? And what's the building technology momentum? The good news is the technology is here. As you can see, it's high momentum for building technology. And so we have the technology. But as you can see, when it comes to equitable adoption and customer economic benefit, in particular, those things are not yet working in a way where everyone can access these benefits and that they have the financial resources to do so. So for me, the way my mind thinks about that from a policy perspective is that especially when you're looking at cost, we have several sectors here that won't be able to really take advantage of the air source heat pump market until we address some policy bottlenecks that are sort of trapping us all in red tape. So we can go to the next slide. And as I had mentioned with the Lac de Flambeau project, when you electrify the project, if you don't then come up with a new way to get cheap energy to the project, you may have significantly higher electricity bills. So oftentimes you need to add solar to the project. But there are several challenges with solar on multifamily. In one case, one example of one of those challenges that you don't have enough roof space in many cases for putting enough, I think Niels actually said this just yesterday or earlier this morning, you don't have enough roof space to feed multifamilies as much energy as they need from solar. So that's one challenge. But even if you look at let's look at a small multifamily. You've got 5 units on this little icon here, 6 electric meters, 6 utility bills, 1 common area, 5 residential units, 1 solar system, one geothermal system in a best case scenario, and 5 individually controlled heat pumps in each of those units. How should you meter that building to maximize the economic benefits and the energy savings for that property? Well, I think if you asked anyone in this room, each person might give you a different answer. And unfortunately, the rules have simply not kept pace with the technology and what's available and how we can most effectively and economically deliver these carbon and energy savings for folks who live in these multifamily buildings. So, we're seeing a great deal of discussion at the Public Service Commission about the rules that require individual unit metering for multifamily buildings, individual electric metering, which raises the price of the solar install. It can raise the price of the HVAC upgrades to be electrified. One of our projects, one of Elevate's projects, we estimated the difficulty in navigating this metering question cost us 20% of the total project cost. Just in, all of the different work that had to be done and equipment that had to be provided to just meet this rule in the code, which actually doesn't practically benefit folks at this time. So that's one area where we need to work. It's one bottleneck that's actually not just going to hamstring, private projects or philanthropic funded projects, but also we're looking at major funding coming from the federal government to Wisconsin through, for example, the Solar for All program. Folks may be aware the state of Wisconsin has applied for about $100 million in funding for low and moderate income solar. That's to go on single family and multifamily buildings. But of course, this multifamily question, how can you ensure a certain amount of energy savings with this solar installation? It's very difficult to do in buildings that are metered individually. And so if Wisconsin can get the policy framework established clearly and effectively so you can just do those buildings without seeking a special waiver or exemption from the commission, building by building, case by case, which is what happens today, then you can scale up rapidly. But right now we've got all these bottlenecks, policy and regulatory bottlenecks, where projects get stuck. There's actually been the reporter, I don't know if she's here in this room, but the reporter who won the award today, she's actually done some great coverage in the Cap Times on these issues. And so I encourage you to read about it. We're actually getting a lot of good conversation going about how to deliver clean energy to Wisconsin residents that need it most. And because of where they happen to live, they can't take advantage easily of these programs and these funds. The other thing I would like to say really quickly is data is a major bottleneck. Some of our programs, we're not working with tenants directly. We're working with landowners, property owners. So we don't have those specific utility account data necessary sometimes to get the full maximum benefit of the rebate, especially if it's sort of linked to income qualification. So I think we need to work in partnership with the folks managing the rebate programs and figure out the best ways to sort of streamline. Really what we have to do, the money's coming fast and we have a great deal of need. And what we have to do is sort of match those things together and make sure that things move as quickly and seamlessly as possible. So it's data access, it's updating the regulations so that they facilitate this kind of project that with state of Wisconsin, has a stated vested interest in. Yeah, so it's streamlining. So there's a lot of work to do, but there's a lot of potential out there. There's a tremendous amount of funding, and there's a lot of technical assistance. So I'm looking forward to the next steps.
Oh, thank you so much. I hope you all are learning so much from these three great experts. I think it's time that I stop taking all of their attention with my questions and hand it over to you all. So if you have a question, you can either put it in the Whova app, which Jody has been faithfully plugging all day, and we will continue to do so. There are some questions already in here, and if you would like to put them in as well. Otherwise, we'll open up the floor. Please raise your hand if you have any questions. Mike will be delivering the microphone to make sure we can hear you.
Question for Mark. You talked about sort of the poor rate that the Holy Monastery received from MG&E for electricity sold back to the grid. Did you consider, or did it make sense to look at battery storage?
Actually, we are adding a battery as well. I did not mention that. It is it's I'm trying to think of the battery size. I believe it's about 110, 125. 110. Thank you, my faithful team back there. 125 kWh. So we're partly, obviously we're going after, yes, excess solar, anything you can store. We're also looking at trimming the peak. The peaks, as it turns out, on these systems are not very pronounced. Unlike summer with an air-cooled chiller, when those chillers really kick in, particularly if they're not being limited, you can get some real nasty spikes. with geothermal, it tends to be a much smoother thing. So it's less of an issue, but still worth going after.
Mark, did that get tax credits too then? Is that the 30% in the ITC?
Yes, the battery will get, actually, the battery should get 40% because it's the 30% because it's linked up to a solar and domestic manufacturer, American made.
So Heather, I have a question for you right here. Hey, so let's assume, I know there are some challenges with 6 meters, and I get that. Let's say there's only 1 meter, like Madison does have old housing stock with 1 meter building, 4 tenant or 8 tenants, right? Usually it's 4. So $100 million coming on solar. There's HVAC incentives for low income families. So as a landlord, like tenants will not give you information about their income.
Right.
So how does that whole process work with incentives?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take that one right from Focus. We do that currently. We do have higher rebates available for some upgrades for income qualified homes. That is a manual process that they do have to go through. It is a bit onerous, right? But that we do need to check their income. Moving forward with the home energy rebates programs, we are hoping to have a more simplified version or path for them to be able to participate. Something where the landlord, right, or the property owner wouldn't have to be the one asking them for their income, and right, that the individual tenants would be able to go through that process, work with us, Focus on Energy, and then on the back end, the contractor hopefully can just see that they are qualified for some tier of additional rebates. There will always kind of be that we do need to check income in most cases, though, and so trying to make it easy, right? Like keeping things easy and simple.
Really quick follow-up. So who will submit?
Give you the mic for the recording. I'm sure they can hear you.
All right. Very quick follow-up question. So who will submit that paperwork? Contractors or the owner of the building? Who's the responsible in this situation?
I suppose it could be who initiated the project. So in some cases, a tenant could ask a landlord or say that they would like to have some improvements done, and the landlord would have to sign off on that, right? Being the property owner, if the tenant wanted to move forward with something and property owner was okay with it. Or if the property owner wanted to initiate that, right, then they would have to get the permission of the tenants. I think in both cases, it's probably the tenant who would be submitting their own information on their income status as a household. So we wouldn't want to be asking the contractor or the property owner, right, to be handling all of that PII, the personally identifiable information, right, security and concerns and everything there. So should be the household would want to do that. Yep.
I have another question for Dylan. As I understand it, Wisconsin is looking at the 2 federally funded programs, both homes and HERA, and right now the thinking is it's $75 million each, I believe. And one of my questions was, I think homes in general just is a little bit more difficult to access, it seems to me. If you're doing the modeled approach, you've got to do that modeling, and that takes time and money. And from what the measured approach could take up to a year afterwards to measure. So one of my concerns was that what if we have really slow uptake on homes? Is there a plan for that, or can money be easily shifted from one to the other? HERA promises to be super easy once you kind of get that down. Anyway, that was my thought. Was just I worry about a slow uptake.
Yeah, I wish they were super easy. Either one of them. They're fairly complicated, right? And it has taken us a while to get them stood up because there's a lot in there. I think the base of your question is, can we shift dollars between the two? And we cannot. Those are allocated at the federal level, certain dollar amounts for each of those programs. We want to make it as simple as we can, right, to be able to participate. And that's the goal. But we can't shift dollars back and forth. So, and if there isn't interest, right, we've got paths, marketing, et cetera, we can go through. I will say there is a lot of kind of pent up demand for these programs as is. I don't think we'll have too much of an issue an interest in the program, at least for the first couple of years to start. So, thank you.
Hi. Hey, everybody. Thank you for your holistic view of the whole energy sector. Really, all three of you cover that pretty well. Could we put up the slide with all those air source heat pumps on it? I'm just curious if this group is looking at the amount of refrigerant required for air source heat pumps versus ground source heat pumps. If I'm not mistaken, you're talking pounds in the case of air source and ounces in the case of geothermal. But can you guys confirm that for me?
I cannot. I don't know that one.
Do we have any geothermal contractors?
Geothermal actually runs a antifreeze type refrigerant of different temperatures that's within the system regarding a gas. I believe ground source will run a liquid form rather than a gas form, so the refrigerant, like you said, ounces of gas versus pounds of liquid. So I think it might be reversed, but I think
both are running 410A. Both are running our 410A refrigerant today. Both machines.
I would ask why? Why do you think there is that differential between a heat pump that is then communicating with the various devices, the air handlers, if you will, or the piping around? Why would it be a difference in the amount of refrigerant between an air source and a geothermal?
Could I hop in here?
Sure, please.
Not officially on the panel, but being part of both geo and air source heat pumps, this is something that we talk a lot in our office quite a bit, especially with like VRF systems. That air source heat pumps, more commercially especially because you're distributing at longer distance, have a lot of refrigerant associated with those systems like 410A. So I think what Scott might be getting at is if you have a loss of refrigerant, potentially the greenhouse gas impacts of refrigerant loss. I don't know if that's what you're getting at, but that's a discussion that often occurs in our office.
No, so we're all about reduce, reuse, and recycle, right? Mm-hmm. So if our chlorofluorocarbon is our refrigerant running the compressors and making the heat exchange, wouldn't it be better to have less?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
we all agree on
Yes.
that. Absolutely.
I will say, so the federal government, and I'm not the expert on this, but the AIM Act is targeting these refrigerants used everywhere in the country. There is a step down. I know that they're shifting to better, GWP refrigerants. So
Right, so we're changing to 454B in January.
Thank you. Yep.
But the line set on your air source heat pump, which distributes it through the heads throughout the house, are all refrigerant line sets in the case of an air source heat pump.
Mm-hmm.
And the ground source heat pump is usually through ductwork, or you're moving air.
This
Or
is-
you're
this
using
is-
hydronic.
This is moving air. This is moving air. Yeah, this is moving air. So that's why I wasn't sure if there'd be much difference, because this goes to a centrally ducted. This is a 85-year-old house, centrally ducted system, one location where the gas phase changes, and that's it. So,
Thanks.
yeah.
A few more questions here before we get to time.
Hi, this question, well, first, my name is Paul Schechter with Sunnyside Development, and this question is for all three of you. I have a case study which both has good news and bad news. The good news is that this is the Stoughton Housing Authority's public housing, 92 units, and we were successful in getting a tax credit award to just do basic rehab, and then we layered on top of that GRRP, which is part of the Inflation Reduction Act for public housing, but it mandates 100% net zero, which is fantastic from my perspective. And the award was $60,000 per unit, which we thought would have been sufficient. Now we're at bidding, and here's the bad news. We're at bidding it out to contractors, and we just blew right past that number. If we add 30% tax credit for the solar, and originally we thought geothermal, we get up to about 6.9 million. The award is 5.5 million. The extra incentives for the 30% tax credit gets it to like 6.9. but our budgets are coming in at like close to 8 million. So how do we fill that gap is the question. And just a little extra clarity, our geothermal bid came in at $34,000 per unit, which, if you're only getting 60,000 total from the incentive, that's over half of it. So we scrapped that and now are going for air source. I've been working with Focus since last June on incentives, and I'm not clear that there's any really for multifamily existing. There's multifamily new construction, so and we're not banking on anything there. And then also there's this 20% adder for affordable housing solar, which sounds great, and we were hoping to do that, but you have to have a signed contract to do it with a solar company, but you have no guarantee that you're actually going to get the money because there's a quota system. So you can't really bank on that either when you're doing these multi-million-dollar projects. So we're having weekly calls with HUD, and they're working with us to fill the gap. But I was just curious if you have any thoughts on what could do it. Thanks.
I'll jump in real quick. Focus on Energy does have existing multifamily rebates. Doug Detloff is here. He's at the booth in that middle room. He can help you out. We've got a whole team as well, and they know about the GRRP as well. So sorry that wasn't evident right up front, but we do have resources for you. So
I can't do the math in my head, but I am. One observation, one comment. The observation is, I'm a little stunned that given that you can get the 40%.
Well, domestic content is not guaranteed, at least.
Yeah.
Our legal counsel does not want us to bank on the domestic content 10% adder.
Well, then,
It has to be really tied up.
yeah, well, I mean, still, if you were just working with a 30% tax credit on the geothermal, it doesn't come. There's nothing to speak of on the air source. So, I mean, right there's a 30% cost differential, and I understand why you're respecting your legal counsel, but that's kind of tough advice, given that I think it's. I mean, we've got assurances on some projects that yes, we can get domestic made, and that's what we're going for. The other comment, though, would be on the bidding on the well field loop. One of the problems right now, and this is a huge problem commercially in Wisconsin, it would include, I believe, your situation. If you're doing wells, geothermal wells for commercial buildings, there's really one player in the state, GeoLoop, great firm.
They're in the room, by the way. We could connect them after they're in the room.
But
Oh, they're
great,
right there.
great firm. The problem is it's a 1.5-year wait list right now if you were ready to roll. If you need to do construction right now, I mean, ready to commit to construction right now, I'm understanding it's a 1.5 years, and it's going to get worse. It's piling on, getting worse fast. So I don't know how that's affecting the bidding either. Our audience member can probably speak to that.
I'll just repeat that. You said 2024 is booked up, so we're looking at 2025 appointments for geothermal.
So we've got a real bottleneck, is the point. See me afterwards. I want to get some more names.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. We are at time, but really appreciate your attendance today, and thank you three for joining us. This was fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you, Lauren.